Okay, so I think we should slowly begin. Good morning, everyone, to everyone who's joining the Social Bakers at Vodafone webinar this morning. As I mentioned earlier, my name is Imi. Many of you know me already, and I'm joined by my colleague Rasa. We'll do some quick introductions in a second. So today's title is Possibilities and Opportunities, and as its name suggests, one of the things we want to do is give some recommendations or suggestions as to how you can make some adjustments to ultimately optimize Vodafone's social marketing. Simple as that. Just two things quickly before we jump in. If you can just quickly type into the chat literally just what country you're dialing in from. We'd just love to know. We know you're operating in all around the world, so that's really cool. And the second thing was, if you do that, can you just switch the chat setting from all panelists to all panelists and attendees? We're going to gather all the questions that you guys have at the end, and what we'll do is we'll follow up via email to everyone, all the aggregated questions and answers. So that's all I just wanted to add. Don't mind me, I'm going to actually disable my camera just because it's eating into my broadband at home. I'm sure like many of you, you're working at home. My wife's here, my kids are here, they're on Zoom calls and lessons and so on, so hopefully you can sympathize with that. But without further ado, let's start today's session. So just quickly, by way of introduction, as I've already suggested, my name is Imi. I work typically in London across our Vodafone business, so thank you for the business for starters. And I'm joined by our senior social consultant, Rasa. And between us, we've got many years of experience working in digital marketing and, of course, in data analysis as well. Let me just go here. So we reached out to all of the markets which we work with and asked them, what matters to you? What things do you want us to look into? And very kindly, every single market without exception sent us a response, which ultimately is distilled into these themes here. So what we'll do is we're going to start off with some global versus regional performance. One of the most hot topics amongst all of our clients is around content best practice and what really makes a successful campaign. Going into more of the performance side, we'll be exploring trends in e-commerce and paid media, and then wrapping up with some insight into really what 2020 has offered us in terms of influence trends like that. So let's just begin with a summary of where the telco market is headed. Just a very quick introduction. So we've reached into the GSMA, everyone's friends, I suppose. And ultimately, over the next 5 years, what we're going to witness is pretty exponential growth across all major factors within the global telco and mobile marketplace. There's going to be growth at scale in every single market. And with growth, obviously, that presents an opportunity, but also it presents challenges. And those challenges tend to be in the areas of ultimately having a different tone of voice and remaining competitive, amongst other things. Now, every day, a whole range of telco brands, including, of course, Vodafone, reaches out to us, and we partner with them. This is just a small sample of about 60 to help overcome those challenges and answer actually quite a wide range of questions in a very agile manner, particularly in the space of digital and social marketing. The other thing that we are helping them achieve now are their strategic business objectives, whether that's operational efficiency or growth, or of course, an enhanced customer experience. And of course, we're very conscious of what Vodafone's strategic objectives are, and we're really eager to help you really shift the needle across these kind of core factors. So that's just a very short, simple introduction to where we see the mobile marketplace heading and the opportunity to remain different. This is what we want to really cover off today. So just starting with some high-level data points. Again, we very often asked, how does our business fare amongst our local markets, or how do we fare against our competitors? So we're going to look at some of these themes just now. And the way we've done this, we've aggregated the social handles from all Vodafone's 23 or so owned and operated markets, as well as approximately those of 100 competitors in the markets where we currently work. And the idea is to give you some ideas as to what does good look like and what adjustments might you make. So let's just start off with some core headlines. The top bar obviously is talking about 2019, the first 6 months of last year, and the same time period for this year in the window below. So year on year, it's fairly obvious what we're seeing is quite a significant fall in total interactions with Vodafone social content. There's a fairly simple reason behind this. It's simply because the overall volume of content has also fallen quite significantly, by 44% in this case. Now, there's actually a positive outcome to this in the sense that really what you're reaping the benefits of is the principle of less is more. And why do I say that? Well, if we look at year-on-year engagement, or the engagement rate, apologies, then actually there's a significant increase by just under 70%, a 69% increase in overall engagement rate with Vodafone's content. So there's lots to be applauded on that basis. So very well done for starters. I think whilst these numbers are interesting, what we'd love to give you is perhaps some ideas as to why this is the case and what you can do to iterate both locally and globally to continue this line of success. Okay, so let's just go to the next slide. And I think, you know, I sort of mentioned the question a minute ago. People ask us, what does good look like? So if we was just look at Vodafone overall engagement rate in 2020 versus its competitors, then clearly you're outperforming them by actually a factor of about 80%. So again, we want to help you look for the answers to why this might be the case. And let's just start off with a couple of clues. So let's just dig a little bit deeper into some of these top line statistics. And we talked about how the overall volume of content has fallen year on year by 44% or so. What's really driving this? Well, the first thing that I observed was there's been actually a drastic fall in the number of tweets across the markets year on year by actually 60%. There are no significant changes in the other channels. In fact, the volumes are fairly similar to a degree, but ultimately we'd love to understand what else might be driving this increased engagement rate other than just simply a reduced amount of content. One clue might be that actually the platform adjustments here are indicating that whilst Facebook is dominating total engagement, actually for me, the most significant insight here is that whilst Instagram's share is still small by just under 5.5%, its increase in share of interactions has actually doubled year on year. It's clearly a fast on the ascendancy platform. It has been so for perhaps 2 to 3 years. And there are, of course, interesting formats within both Facebook and Instagram, but in particular in Instagram, that are clearly resonating with audiences very well. So if we just to look at actually on the topic of formats, and there's, I think, some very important things to call out here. So the first thing we witnessed year on year is a 75% reduction in the volume of status posts that Vodafone has been putting out there. This is a really key factor here. And what that's done, the positive impact here, is it's given an increase in the relative shares of content, of video and link posts, and actually greater prominence to carousel posts. Again, the numbers of carousel posts look small. However, what that's done is have a dramatic increase, as we'll touch on in a minute, in the way that consumers actually consume your content. So how have these changes been reflected in the way that consumers engage and play with your content? So by shifting away from status posts, Vodafone's consumers have now had the ability to not just see, but actually interact on a much greater level with video, link, and carousel posts. Really high numbers here, 90, 80, and 72 percentage points in terms of share of overall engagement. Those are really significant increases, and we really urge you to explore these formats further to really make the most of them. So the last things we wanted to call out here were actually just, call out what we'd like to describe as Vodafone centers of excellence. What we've obviously analyzed all the markets, but we came across 4 that, bearing in mind the average, the all Vodafone engagement rate is 0.27%. What we wanted to do was call out those that have consistently outperformed that this year. So in terms of just the actual performance levels, you can see that there's, by a factor of 4, one market in particular has been particularly successful. 3 others have also been consistent at performing, and those markets are Turkey, Albania, Hungary, and Spain. All 4 of these markets, as well, worth pointing out, are also partnering with social bakers for their analytics, amongst other things. And we have regular dialogue with them, and so very well done. You've done extremely well. I think just on this, to wrap up this first part, in terms of sort of the observations or recommendations, just as an observer and someone who's been used to working with brands for 6 or 7 years in this space, I think that the takeaways are that less is more. There's clearly a correlation with a reduction of content in terms of higher engagement rates. Platform mix is something that needs to be questioned all the time. The platforms are evolving all the time. They're coming up with new formats all the time. We really recommend you exploring and testing new opportunities as well as questioning your current platform mix right now. And then finally, because of the innovation in the space of formats, again, there's been some big surges in consumption, for example, with Instagram stories starting in 2019. There are other kind of components like videos and links and carousels that are clearly resonating very well with Vodafone's audiences. So keep up the good work, and let's see what else we can help answer for you today. So the second part we're going to explore is, as its name suggests, really how can we help Vodafone to answer the question of what is the right content strategy? What is the right approach to my social marketing? Every day, brands around the world ask us questions around, what is the right format we should use, Imi? What is the right platform? What's the right balance for all these things? What's the right frequency? What's the right tone of voice? How do we stay relevant? How do we stay authentic? And how do we also still try and drive growth with acquisition style content? So we're going to try and give you some clues as to how we can help you answer these questions. And the way we would go about it ourselves, and the way we do this on a regular basis with our clients, is to essentially apply a blend of pure data and on the quantitative side, as well as perhaps look at some qualitative insight to help you fine-tune your strategies on an ongoing basis. So if we look at these kind of 4 markets, how would we go about identifying what's made them successful? This is just a couple of simple kind of clues amongst many. So the first thing we did was to look at what is it in those local markets, what are the platforms that are really achieving great success in terms of driving that engagement. And as clearly Instagram has been a standout performer in terms of a channel for Vodafone in these markets. And if we were to go a little bit deeper and understand in terms of sort of content types, what's really been performing, it's blatantly obvious that carousels, photos, and videos, pretty much without exception, have been outstandishly successful in terms of that. So the immediate kind of calls to action for me are to really explore opportunities, not just in Instagram, but of course to go one step further and devise a really optimal format mix as well. Okay, so those are just 2 of multiple data points or clues we can help you with to really strike that optimum balance. Okay, let's just move away from data just for a moment and explore some other opportunities as to how we can help you kind of create this optimum content. So one of the things we did was we of course, as I've mentioned, we've aggregated all Vodafone social properties as well as hundreds of competitors into our platform. And what we did was we ranked of the nearly 7,000 pieces of content that Vodafone has published this year across Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. We ranked them in just by simple means of engagement. And what we found was, of those 7,000, Vodafone Egypt has had a phenomenal success. And what I mean by that is, of the top 50 posts, Vodafone Egypt has actually got 44 of the top of those spots. So they're doing something clearly very smart. So this led me to kind of question, what are the attributes of Vodafone Egypt's content strategy that have made this kind of so overwhelmingly successful? This post, just to kind of call this out, there's a couple of reasons why I want to call this out. So if I then look at all the content in 2020 to date in Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter from all brands in every country around the world, this is the single most engaged piece of content at a global level. So I don't think this is just left down to coincidence. I think there's some good rationale behind this. So I actually reached out to our clients in Egypt and asked them to tell me a little bit about, what is this post about? What's the story behind this, and how did this come about? So they sent me a very nice summary to just explain that, of course, this is a video post, first and foremost. It's obviously celebrating Ramadan. Again, a huge cultural event in Egypt. I think equally importantly, it has a cross-section of celebrities covering a number of different kind of audiences. They're just singing a song, and that's great in simplicity. But actually, what is also super important is that there's no product mentioned in this post, and actually the central message is that strength comes from togetherness. So there's a real community spirit about this piece of content, and I think that's one of the main reasons why this has been successful. But just looking at a higher level amongst their broader content strategy in 2020, there has been heavy focus on video. Seems to be of very high quality, but equally importantly, there's been a great selection and variety of authentic local brand ambassadors. And these brand ambassadors talk to a number of different audiences and passion points. So I can recognize Mo Salah on the far left. My kids are both devoted Liverpool fans, obsessed with football. So clearly sport is a huge passion point. But beyond that, we've got local, well-known stars from the music industry, from film and TV, as well as other kind of people from different walks of life. And they are talking to different audiences about different passion points. For example, on the bottom right, Mona Zaki is a well-known singer. She's talking about life at home with her kids. That's something that speaks to all of us, right? So there's a really good kind of blend of content here. The other thing that struck me was that there's a really clear and very genuine goodwill campaign, in particular in and around COVID-19. And in this case, they're celebrating Egypt's healthcare heroes, really, really beautifully executed, actually, as well as kind of global venerable institutions such as the World Health Organization. So sort of very clear-cut partnerships there. But whilst all this is going on, one of the other things that really struck me is that they're still maintaining a focus on acquisition, as well as a growth from their existing customers by means of upselling different packages, if you like. So this is a fantastic mixture of content, of video. There's so many positive attributes to this, and that's partially why I think they've been so successful in the kind of the overall league table of content. So just in summary, why do I feel? What are the kind of I guess takeaways or observations? There's been some great video content, very innovative and dynamic. Really grabbing the current theme of remote calls and so on. It's a bit like we're doing today. Very authentic and top quality brand ambassadors that do speak to a wide range of passion points and of course audiences. The CSR or goodwill campaign's been really clear, very well executed, and all the whilst this is going on, they've maintained a great focus on acquisition and growth. And actually that goes against what many clients we're talking to at the moment have told us, that they've put acquisition on hold. They want to get through lockdown or COVID-19 and see what happens on the other side before they actually even explore. So credit to Vodafone Egypt for maintaining that focus with a well balance. And just a couple of other campaigns that caught our eye. that have been successful from an engagement perspective. This is actually Vodafone Spain Business. And again, I guess grabbing the trend and the themes of COVID-19, what they've done is they've got a series of videos delivered by real people. In this case, these are business professionals sharing their expertise and advice on how to navigate and overcome the challenges of obviously a very disruptive time for both professionals and consumers. So really, really, really positive, creative there. Great hashtag, Observatorio Vodafone. And beyond, let's just take a step outside Vodafone. There are a couple of other but very important things we would recommend that you do. So of course, everyone that we're probably speaking with today is engaged in the concept of competitor analysis across many different levels. And I think the opportunity for Vodafone is you're probably more than aware of what competitors are doing within your marketplace. If you're not, certainly we can give you that visibility very quickly. But actually, we think that there's a greater opportunity to explore what telcos are doing in other markets, because that's sometimes where we see some really interesting, dynamic and innovative content. And here's just a few examples from a few markets, both in Europe and beyond. But equally, and I cannot understate the importance of this particular approach, is that we really feel that there's great opportunities for inspiration by looking outside the telco vertical. Telco is really interesting. It's dynamic. It's fast moving, and so onwards. People like technology, but beyond that, there's a great opportunity to really tap into, I guess, the kind of the emotional strings that are being pulled in your markets right now. So what this screen is showing me or showing you is some of the most shared content just in the UK in the last 10 days or so. And what this is helping me to establish is, what is it that really people are engaging with, that they're talking about with their friends and so onwards. And just for starters, the return of live sport in the UK put a smile on millions of people's faces, as I know it has done in Italy and Spain and Germany and so on. That's just football. So obviously that's a huge passion point, and that's something, there's an opportunity to kind of, I guess, try and see if you can exploit this. Apart from that, there are themes here around the welfare and education of kids. There's mental well-being. There's the environment. There's Britain's Got Talent. You can call that a cultural event if you like to. That's debatable. But equally, there's some really good content here from some fashion brands about playfulness, about fun, about humor. But just by understanding what the zeitgeist is right now, I'm able to adjust on an agile way how I can then really speak to my audiences. And as an observer, it's been very interesting to explore these kind of themes. So again, just before we go into the next section, quick summary here. Really understand what is it that's resonated from a platform or a format mix in the past, and just apply those learnings. Going back to perhaps more recent history, really understand what's happening right now, both inside the Vodafone stable as well as outside. Look at what matters to your consumers in your markets and beyond. And of course, I think it's really important that there are some consistently strong verticals, fashion and other lifestyle verticals that are consistently successful. So at this point, I'm going to pass the baton to my colleague Rasa, and she's going to talk about a number of different themes, starting with e-commerce.
Sure. Thank you, Imi. And hi, everyone. So let's continue the session, and let's take a look into driving e-commerce through social. So in general, there are two ways you can drive e-commerce to social: driving traffic or driving sales. Let's start by looking at the first option, driving traffic. Now, historically, Facebook has always been the #1 social media channel in terms of driving traffic to websites, dwarfing competitors such as Twitter, for example. Then, in 2018, this happened, and Facebook announced that they're going to change their newsfeed algorithm prioritizing content from friends and family and showing less content to users that are coming from brands. Well, following this announcement, a lot actually happened. But one of the things I do want to call out here is that following that year, everyone was announcing that referral traffic from Facebook is in decline. Now, fast forward to today. Is link traffic still worth it? Now, to answer that, let's take a look into how much link content is out there. Now, out of all analyzed markets, all Vodafone content on Facebook, link posts make up around 5.6% of all the content. For competitor, that share is over 22%. That's actually over or nearly 4 times more compared to Vodafone. So now the question is, who actually has it right? Vodafone or competitors in terms of frequency of sharing link content? Now, to answer that, let's take a look into the engagement for that content. For Vodafone, all link posts account for just over 3% of the total engagement. For competitors, that's just slightly higher, 3.3%. Now, let's not forget that competitors actually post 4 times more link content. So the difference, which is barely existent, actually does not make up for the huge difference in the share of content. So Vodafone clearly has it right in terms of sharing link content, the frequency of sharing that content. So what we wanted to do at this point here is to take a look if we can find a success recipe for those link posts. And when we started looking into the top performing link posts across all the markets, what we've realized is that there actually may not be a success recipe, but it's rather a success origin, as the absolute majority of the top performing link content was coming from Egypt, whether that was from Vodafone or some of its competitors. And in fact, when we compared the engagement rate for link content in Egypt versus the other 22 markets, we've seen that there is significant difference in engagement rates. So what really this tells us is that audiences are not just engaging with telecom content in Egypt as such, they're also very keen to engage with link content too. Now, what about elsewhere? There have obviously been some great link posts in other markets as well, such as Vodafone Hungary, or a couple of great posts from Spain, for example, Movistar or Mayo. However, compared to the link posts from Egypt, none of these top performing posts were actually talking about products. They were all more related to sharing some tips or sharing some news about entertainment, football, or movies. So really, if you think about it, links don't seem to be the holy grail for driving traffic to your website. And yet, if we take a look into the dominant industries on social, both Facebook and Instagram, e-commerce is actually booming. E-commerce brands are the #1 most engaging brands on average on Facebook. They're the #2 on Instagram at the moment. However, if we compare this year's engagement to Q4 last year, we've seen that it grew by over 100%. That means that engagement for e-commerce brands on Instagram more than doubled in a very short time frame. So what is really fueling that growth for e-commerce? Well, to answer that, let's actually take a look into driving sales directly through social media. Last year, Mark Zuckerberg shared a blog post where he was talking about his vision for social networking. Now, one of the things he was saying there is that they're going to continue building WhatsApp, Facebook the way they built WhatsApp, focusing on privacy. What he was also saying there is that they're going to focus on businesses, payments, and commerce. Now, this blog post may have only been posted last year. However, this has been the reality. This has been the reality for Instagram for over the past 3 years, when one after another, different features that enabled e-commerce on Instagram were being launched, starting from product tagging on feed, then stories, launching a dedicated shopping tab in Explorer, launching shopping ads. And I think the most importantly, launching the possibility for users to check out without leaving the app. So that is to pay for product without leaving Instagram. Now, a lot of these features were actually very quickly adopted by the maybe more traditional Instagram industries, such as brands in fashion and beauty. What we've started seeing more and more recently is that brands in other industries, such as tech or even consumer products, have also started adapting this feature. In fact, Target, the massive retailer in the US, has recently announced that they will be implementing Instagram checkout for their audiences. That means people in the US will be able to browse and buy products from Target on Instagram. Now, all of these features I've talked about so far at the moment are only for products. So you can't sell services. However, over the past couple of years, there has been a lot of speculations in media that Facebook is aiming to become the WeChat for the West. And for those of you who might be a little bit less familiar with WeChat, it's effectively a social networking app in China, or rather, I would say a multi-platform, multi-purpose app in China that actually enables its 1 billion daily active users not only to social network or message, it also allows them to shop, to order services, to even order their cab or pay their bills. So it really covers much more than just the regular product shopping. Now, there's still quite a way to go for Facebook. However, it seems we are moving there. So what are the key takeaways here when we look into e-commerce? Well, first of all, as we've seen, link posts should be used in moderation, but they can definitely work if they add value to your audiences. Obviously, an exception just confirms the rule. And I think the example of Egypt really shows that the importance of knowing your audiences. Very often, something that is true for an average brand out there will not necessarily be true for your brand in your market. Now, on the other hand, we've also seen that the fact that Instagram is now able to support the full customer journey, that is from brand awareness to the actual purchase, that is fueling massive growth for e-commerce brands on the platform. And if we continue, or if Facebook continues that direction, that might soon come for other services, not only products as well. Okay, Now that we talked about driving e-commerce through social, mostly organic, let's take a look into paid media as well. Now, if we take a look into ad spend across the different regions around the world, and I think this graph nicely represents that ad spend is very much a seasonal thing. However, this year, ad spend was not so much affected by seasonality, but rather by an unfortunate event, the outbreak of COVID-19. So what happened is that in the beginning of March, once the virus started spreading, a lot of brands have actually stopped or significantly reduced their ad spend. Now, the reason that's important is because it actually had a very big impact on advertising costs as well. And obviously now we're sort of coming out of the crisis, and most brands have nearly returned to the normal spend levels. The key word there is nearly, because if we compare the advertising costs of June 2019 to this year, an average brand actually paid over 21% less for a click and over a quarter less for 1,000 impressions. I think we'll all agree that is still quite significant. But now, enough talking about any brand out there, let's actually bring it a bit closer to home. So what was the impact for the telecom industry and obviously Vodafone itself? So for when we're looking at ad spend, telecom brands actually weren't really impacted. An average brand continued to spend around the same amount throughout this year. Now, neither has an average ad account in Vodafone seen a significant impact, though it is worth pointing out that there's generally seem to be a lot of fluctuations in the spend of Vodafone across the different regions. Now, on the other hand, if we take a look into the costs, there has been actually quite a big and significant impact. The fact that brands in other industries have reduced their spend came in handy from telecom brands in general, but also for Vodafone in particular, because the cost per mil and cost per click has been significantly reduced throughout the course of this year. But okay, I guess enough about the fluctuations, which basically none of us can really impact. Let's actually take a look where most of that advertising spend and budgets went to. If we take a look into where an average brand spends their budget, we can clearly see that the majority of advertising budgets goes for advertising on a Facebook feed, followed then by Instagram feed and Instagram stories. However, if we compare this year's data to last year's data, there has been quite a significant shift where brands started reducing the share of spend they dedicate to Facebook and focusing that spend to Instagram, both feed and stories. Now, if we would compare that to where Vodafone spends its budget, there's actually a couple of differences. So the first one is that Vodafone is actually spending significantly more on Facebook feed and somewhat less on Instagram. Now, is this the most efficient way to distribute the budgets? Well, let's take a look into the cost. First of all, if we look into the Facebook feed, it has by far the lowest cost per click. So Facebook feed can be a very good placement for driving direct response campaigns. On the other hand, there is definitely an opportunity in Instagram stories and potentially even Facebook Messenger, where costs per mil are significantly lower and therefore could also drive effective advertising for different types of goals. So, all in all, about paid advertising, a few key points I want to just call out again. First of all, the decline in ad prices throughout this year, especially during spring, meant that active advertising were and actually still are able to get more out of their investment. At the same time, for anyone who's planning their further budgets, it is definitely worth taking into account that with advertising spend across the globe returning to normal levels, the cost will also return to normal levels. So you shouldn't be counting on the low costs anymore. And the real opportunity for Vodafone is really in tracking as well as optimizing their investment based on performance, whether that's by placement, targeting, creative, or any other aspects of that. Okay, now let's talk about one other topic today. Let's talk about what has been happening in the influencer marketing scene throughout 2020. Now, very similarly as with ad spend, influencer marketing has actually been quite significantly hit by COVID-19 outbreak. Now, after a very active end of year last year and a calm January, which is, by the way, completely to be expected, what we didn't see is an increase from March onwards, increase in sponsored content that we would normally see. In fact, there has been a further reduction of sponsored posts from influencers. And not only in terms of content, the number of brands collaborating with influencers has also been declining. And yet, there still has been plenty of brands that continued working with influencers and actually done that quite successfully. So here you see a cooperation efficiency graph based on engagement. Basically, it compares average engagement for an influencer sponsor post to the brand's post. And this year, what we've seen is that there's some rather unusual suspects leading the charge, such as healthcare and finance, that really ran some effective influencer marketing campaigns. The first part is actually taken by telecom, and therefore we wanted to share a couple of stories of good examples that actually drove that efficiency. So Imi, here's back to you.
Okay, so just for starters, it's I think as Ras has highlighted, there's been some interesting verticals at the top of that influencer efficiency, including, of course, telcos. And this is something from the UK, from British Telecom. And for those of you who don't know, as I'm sure you do anyway, BT is one of the longest established telecom providers in the UK. This is actually a very simple campaign. It's not social only. Of course, it's not. It's actually part of a wider Above the Land campaign that started shortly after lockdown began. I think this actually went live in early April. And what it is, it's a lovely brand story. It's a brand campaign amplifying and sharing advice and expertise, less so in terms of what Vodafone Spain did on the business side, but simply to help consumers, for whom, of course, this period has been disruptive, full of firsts and so on. And they've really had to adjust their lifestyles in many different guises. And as BT kind of calls out here, they really wanted to provide real value to their customers and beyond, just effectively to the nation. And very importantly, really deviate in this particular campaign away from the acquisition side. So by adding value across a number of different themes, such as homeschooling, which is something very close to my own heart, and I'm sure to many others of you on the call, this is really good execution by leveraging a very well-known personality called David Walliams. He's an author, he's a comedian, he's an actor, very, very recognizable. He's embracing the theme of homeschooling. Now, the mechanic, there isn't really a conventional call to action from an acquisition perspective. But what the call to action is, there's a teaser video across the social channels. This is just a screenshot of the Facebook post, but replicated in other channels as well. There's a teaser video with a call to go through to the .com and play the video in full. And once you're in that .com environment, you can play the video, which is embedded in YouTube because of all the content is hosted in the BT YouTube Hub too. You can watch the video there, as well as download a guide on top tactics for homeschooling. And a series of other posts using, again, quite similar to what Vodafone Egypt had done, a wide range of influencers or celebrities that speak to a number of different audiences and what they care about. Kids protection, help with WhatsApp, which is obviously all of us on this call are digital natives, or I like to think I am anyway. Helping getting your business online, and then just simple content around a podcast. Really nice blend of content that sits in a very well executed hub in the .com. How do I know this is successful? Well, first of all, we work with BT, and one of the team here has helped put their measurement framework together. Suffice to say, of course, I can't share any particular kind of success metrics, but what I can say is it's been overwhelmingly positively received by the marketplace and the audiences alike. So that's just a simple, local, very current story. The only thing I was going to say was that what BT have been able to do, and what we would recommend all brands to do in this case, is to constantly monitor the effectiveness of how each individual personality's content has performed, and of course then adjust both organic and paid strategies based on those kind of insights. So I'm going to hand back to Rasa, and we're quite close to wrapping up. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Imi, again. So just before finishing this section, I wanted to share another example, a completely different this one, and it comes from T-Mobile in the US. Now, the reason I'm saying it's different is because T-Mobile was actually aiming not so much to reach the masses or drive efficiency in terms of engagement. They really partnered with a myriad of different influencers, micro or some even nano influencers, to reach and connect to very specific niche audiences. For example, they have been partnering with some regional and I would say very specific, very targeted radio station hosts to be their brand ambassadors and talk about T-Mobile, and often even sponsor their commercial offerings. Now, a number of those hosts are actually Hispanic, which effectively allows T-Mobile to connect to their Spanish-speaking audiences as well, which is probably a bit less done through the more traditional above-the-line advertising. But the one example I actually wanted to call out is their partnerships with a number of moms who are bloggers as well, who they partner with in order for them to promote T-Mobile's Magenta First Responder Plan. That's effectively just a discounted mobile plan aimed at first responders, whether that's ambulance drivers or policemen. And the reason I think this little partnership was so great is the way it was carried out. Now, each of these moms actually shared some content where they shared a very personal story about how their life has been touched by first responders. And most of those posts were actually related to their kids. Now, none of them had a massive impact or country wide impact. They were all fairly small influences, and therefore the engagement was not super high. However, the audiences that were reached were really touching. I think I've picked a couple of responses to this campaign where it was truly a good response to both these influencers sharing personal stories, but also for the initiative of T-Mobile. So I think really all I wanted to say with this completely different example is that influencer marketing can serve a lot of different purposes, and it doesn't always have to be focused on mass reach or efficiency. Now, before we actually wrap up, I just want to spend a next minute telling you a little bit how we were able to arrive to all of these insights that we shared with you in the past 50 minutes. Now, probably none of you are going to be surprised if I say all of this data was received or was basically gotten from the Social Baker suite. So it's all either the suite or our data. And the way we've leveraged our suite to arrive at those insights, first for the content intelligence and reporting part, we've really looked into all of the content across Vodafone as well as the competitors across the different channels to analyze what content performed the best, but also what content was received the most positively based on the common sentiment. We've then aggregated all of this data and sliced and diced it in different ways in our dashboards module to find out and retrieve all of those insights. On the paid media side, we leveraged our paid module that allowed us to bring all of the Vodafone ad account data into one place in order to analyze both the evolution as well as the efficiency based on placement or targeting, and compare that performance to global averages or industry-specific, in this case, telecom-specific averages. And last but not least, we're also leveraging our influencer module to discover some great examples of influencer marketing. So to wrap up, what were really the key takeaways that Amy and I learned while doing this analysis? So first and foremost, it was really apparent the importance of measuring and iteration, and whether that's content, paid media, or influencer activity, constantly doing that can really bring great results. Another thing is the importance of tracking Vodafone, other Vodafone markets, competitors, as well as the wider industry landscape. So at the very least, you can get inspired by that, but sometimes you can also learn what not to do simply by learning from other mistakes. And last but not least, there's always opportunities in the changing world, and I think that's especially apparent this year. And some changes might be related to user behavior, some other to social media innovation. So it's really important to keep your pulse on where that's moving. So that is it for us.
Great. Okay, thank you, Rasa. Just before you go, just in terms of what's going to happen after today's event. So first of all, thanks very much for taking the time to join us. We really enjoyed putting this together. We genuinely love working with Vodafone. Just for the record, I've been a Vodafone customer for well over 20 years, which is cool. So we're going to share a link to the recording and, of course, the key takeaways that Rasa has just so eloquently summed up. We'll also aggregate the questions and answers that people have put within the chat about via email. If there's any particular questions, burning questions that you have now, please email us and we will respond in kind. And then last but not least, what we'll do is our local account teams in markets will get in touch with you just to understand if there's any particular topics that resonated today, or whether there's any particular questions that you'd like to ask and address on perhaps on more of a one-to-one basis. So thank you very much. Have a lovely rest of the week. And yes, we'll be in touch soon.